is that it starts with the strategy, but then it's about bringing and engaging others to help us along with that strategy, right? Because no small nonprofit is not going to change a region, right? Yeah. Let's be honest about it. It takes a catalyst, though, that engages the corporations and the educational institutions and government and economic development and et cetera. And when we're all driving on that same mission, then we really have the ability to transform the region. If you have an idea of a problem you want to solve, and you think you can solve that through technology, that's all you need, right? We'll help you from there. And I think that's a different mindset and mentality, right? Of people have lots of good ideas and there aren't, barriers or prerequisites.
Welcome to this week's Change Agent Podcast. My name is Nathan Lesnowski. I'm your host. I'm Concurrency's Chief Technology Officer. We have a great show today. This is the podcast where we talk about the transformation that's happening within business and in communities through technology. This is one of the most important topics happening in our generation, is how technology is transforming the fabric of what we do. We've had some fantastic guests over the last several sessions. We've talked about everything from manufacturing to education to the transformation of how we deliver services to customers, the way we organize teams and pods, the way we think about delivering online training. There's just so many topics where technology is transforming the fabric of our businesses, and we have a great topic today. Today, I have Kathy Henrich. Kathy is here to talk about the Milwaukee Tech Hub. The Milwaukee Tech Hub is an organization that's taking Milwaukee and engaging technology within the greater community to drive it as a technology center nationally and globally. She's executing transformation within businesses and communities and education, and I'm so proud to have her on the podcast today. So welcome, Kathy.
Hey, well, thank you very much. I'm really excited to talk to you about this topic.
Awesome. I'm so glad you're here. So why don't we start just to get to know you a little bit. Tell me a little bit about your journey to entering into transforming the technology space within a community. How did you get there? What were the steps you went through that enabled you to enter into that space?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I'm actually a longtime tech executive. I ran $500 million businesses for IBM, et cetera. But back in about 2017, one of the things that we were doing as an organization is we were, automation was coming in, AI was coming in, and we were rapidly changing jobs. And as many in the industry have, we were getting rid of jobs over here and trying to hire people with different skills in this other space. Mm-hmm. And I believe there was a better way. I believe there was a better way to transform with technology, with the people alongside of that. So I actually went back and got my master's in workforce and talent development, specifically focused on AI and automation and how we need to transform our people along with technology. And that led to some interesting things. I had the opportunity to deeply engage in the community while I did that, actually volunteered for the Tech Hub. And then went back to IBM, but later went to Accenture and helped organizations as they were going through their individual transformations, help transform people. And when the coalition was formed in October of 19, I brought Accenture on as one of the founding members. And it just so happened, I was asked if I would consider thinking about joining the coalition as the CEO. And I joined because it's such an opportunity to have impact. As you stated, technology is transforming every part of our economy, of our companies, of our workforce, et cetera. And the ability to collaborate across the region to have impact on scale is really what motivated me to drive both the economic prosperity of the region, but personal prosperity of individuals as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. In taking on the role as CEO of the Milwaukee Tech Hub, tell me about the transformation that's happening and what you've had to work through to be able to make that happen. It's not just like engaging in one organization and thinking about how you transform the fabric of that business. It's about how do you change the mindset? How do you engage employers? How do you get people entering into new educational disciplines they weren't before? Walk me through how you're looking at that problem and how you started to make progress in that problem.
Yeah, it's interesting you start there, because one of the initial challenges is, how do you do that, right? And there had been some strategy work coming into when I came into it, but we rapidly evolved that, because when you think about transformation of a region, it requires that there's demand for those jobs, those tech jobs, and at the same time, you're matching it with the right supply of individuals to fill those jobs.
Yep.
So we really got kind of, I'll call it, clear on what we needed to do. We needed to transform the image of the region. We have 80,000 tech workers here in the Milwaukee region, 2,000 tech businesses. Nobody knows it, right? And so transforming that image of the region to the one of really the tech region that we already are, and telling that story. The second is really driving a startup community, which drives innovation, which drives jobs, but also is very attractive to talent in the tech space. And the third is around the recruitment and growth of tech companies here in the region. And then you have to match that with the appropriate supply. And we built that around K through 20, programs that would inspire and retain the talent here, around reskilling and upskilling, and then finally the attraction and retention of individuals. But, that story is that it starts with the strategy, but then it's about bringing and engaging others to help us along with that strategy, right? Because no small nonprofit is not going to change a region, right? Yeah. Let's be honest about it. It takes a catalyst, though, that engages the corporations and the educational institutions and government and economic development and et cetera. And when we're all driving on that same mission, then we really have the ability to transform the region.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because this is not a unique problem. It's not like every other city in the United States isn't thinking, well, how can I make technology a part of who I am and how I deliver? But it feels like Milwaukee and this particular region has a set of really interesting competitive benefits to it. Could you talk a little bit about, as you look to see how you can drive the technology transformation and the movement of the Milwaukee community, how Milwaukee has certain unique qualities that made that unique to Milwaukee versus maybe trying to make us just another copy of Silicon Valley or Seattle or something like that? What's unique about Milwaukee that creates us as a type of tech community that would draw people here versus going to some other tech community?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and one that I think as our committee structures got started, we really focused on early on is what is different about the Milwaukee region. And one of them, and this is important, is quality of life, right? I mean, how often can you have the big city and within 15 minutes you're in the country or on the lake? And it's like all the big city amenities are here, while still having that balance as well. So that's one of them, but there's lots of Midwestern cities, like that. Cost of living is obviously another one that we really excel on, with one of the very lowest costs of living in the country. So combined with quality of life, that differentiates us. The third, and that's really about our life piece of it, but the tech piece of it's also differentiated, right? So one of the things as we looked at what we're good at is we're really good at transforming essential industries and products here in the region and transforming those for the digital age. We understand physical products, right? And as physical meets digital, we have this advantage of being able to combine the two of them to make those, to take those into the digital era in a way that's unique. And so that's also an area of differentiation. And I'd say the last thing is we're solving essential problems, right? As you look around the region, it's around things like healthcare and equipment for healthcare, and we have an energy sector and a sustainability sector and health tech and fintech, et cetera, all things that are essential. And I think that we're solving those kinds of problems that you can explain to your grandma and grandpa, right?
Yeah,
of
totally.
how we're making the world better.
Yeah, that's such a great answer because, when I think about the emergence of technology at some of the coasts, and a lot of it was represented by startup software projects and greater SaaS platforms like Salesforce or Microsoft's clouds and things of that nature. But I think what really characterizes the Midwest, and especially Milwaukee, is exactly what you said. We produce things and we create things, and we create things that oftentimes are very transformational. And as digital transformation has entered into every business, it's turned what is a tech business into almost every business, right? So all the things that we do in the Milwaukee area, from healthcare to manufacturing, are now tech businesses. Has that been one of the things that you've been trying to get across? How's that mindset shift from like tech businesses are only businesses that, write software to all businesses are tech businesses and they're all investing in that space?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and one that I think we are starting to see that mindset shift. Not only in our executive population, right, of our corporations, et cetera, but also into our government officials, et cetera. So, for example, right now I'm working with the regional economic development organizations writing the strategic plan, and there is now a recognition of that criticality of tech. Not tech in just, the tech industry, like, et cetera, but the criticality of tech across all industries. And I think that's a growing and important recognition, and one of the reasons that we're gaining the momentum behind what we're doing here in the region, and what's driving, frankly, the need for doubling tech talent here in the region, right? We're not doing that, it does drive economic prosperity, et cetera, but it's absolutely critical to our organizations being successful. And one of the things I didn't mention earlier, and I should have, is as we look to double that, as you mentioned, this is a challenge everywhere, right? Lots of organizations or lots of cities want to be tech hubs. I think one of the things we're doing differently is we recognize we can't just import a whole bunch of tech talent. That, there's a shortage nationally, globally, et cetera. We have to grow it with our own talent, and we need to do that inclusively of all populations so that we can drive innovation, et cetera. And I think that's one of the driving forces here as well.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you're doing that, especially how you're driving inclusive engagement within the tech community? That's a hard space to sometimes enter into, and there's a lot of people who have reasonable opinions about how to do that. What's your opinion? How do we get an inclusive community really building a skill set within tech and then have jobs on the other side for them to do?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things. First of all, it's a purposeful focus, right? When we are doing programs, we're doing it very purposely to get to audiences that we may not have otherwise. A good example is our 4M incubator, right? We had 65% representation from traditionally underrepresented populations in tech in our last 4M incubator. And the way we did that is by going out and recruiting in non-traditional formats. We went out to 120 different community organizations, down to literally an entrepreneurial group in a church, and said, if you have an idea of a problem you want to solve, and you think you can solve that through technology, that's all you need, right? We'll help you from there. And I think that's a different mindset and mentality, right? Of people have lots of good ideas, and there aren't, barriers or prerequisites. I think on the tech talent perspective, we have to look at non-traditional talent sources, right? It's not only a 4-year degree. It can come through apprenticeship programs. It can come through 2-year programs. All of those create on-ramps into tech that attract a much more diverse population into tech as well. So by changing our requirements and creating pathways that don't require that 4-year degree, we actually create diversity as well.
So that's a really interesting answer, and I think it really goes with a question that I have about how once you've gotten students in a position where they've gone through a set of classes or an educational experience or a ramp-up program or a college program or whatever it is, how do you connect them to that first opportunity? Especially when you're trying to engage a group of people that haven't necessarily been in tech before, and that first opportunity is that critical opportunity, and maybe one that they didn't have someone just walking them into. How do you ensure that those opportunities exist within the region? What does that investment look like from the Milwaukee Tech Hub standpoint?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of pathways that we have chosen to take to try to increase that. The first is partnership with companies and organizations that have those pathways to employment baked into the educational process. So as soon as they are completed, they're immediately placed into a tech role. So, because that pathway to employment is important. The second one is really around apprenticeships. We worked with the Department of Workforce Development here in the state. We got Apprenti approved here in the region to be able to offer education. And we have now a first employer to take software development apprentices through the program. And we look to expand that going forward in the future. It's also around internship programs in the student population, right? Making sure that there are opportunities for them. So last summer, we did a summer virtual internship in conjunction with the Commons. We had 120 students go through, but at the end of that, we had employer engagement. And many, I think over 50% had an employer that had a pathway into employment as a result of that. And so those are all ways that we can do that, and we need to continue to build it. As we go forward into this year, it's also to look at how do we help create collective supports for organizations to be able to support that entry-level talent in that organization as well. So we've done some things and more to come as we go forward into the future.
Okay. When you think about the connection to those organizations that are providing the first opportunity, how critical has engaging the leadership of local businesses to be part of the solution been? You mentioned yourself, like a small not-for-profit isn't going to make this work, right? It has to be broader than that. What has been the secret to engaging that broader community in the importance of not only tech being part of their businesses, but connecting the broader employment community to that idea of growing tech in the region?
Yeah, Nathan, it's been so critical, right? We could not have done what we've accomplished so far this year without our member organizations, concurrency being a critical example of that, right? And as we engage with them, and as we look at this, we're looking at what can we do collectively that it's really hard to do as one individual organization. So for example, telling the story about Milwaukee and the breadth of opportunities here, et cetera, that's difficult to do as one organization. But collectively, we can do that to show whether it's students, reskilling populations, or people looking to move back to the region, the kinds of opportunities that exist here by sectors, the fact that there's career paths both laterally and vertically, and to help them understand, those opportunities for professional development and ongoing skills development and engagement in the tech community. All those things are important to do. And when we build this collectively, which is what we're doing through now 65 members in the Tech Hub Coalition and growing all the time, is that we can put together both programs and supports, et cetera, that enable that. And it takes the commitment of forward-looking leaders in our corporate community to engage in that, to allow their teams to engage with us, to really progress this forward in the region.
Awesome. Okay, well, last question for you, Kathy. Can you tell me just a little bit about who's inspired you? I mean, you've driven such interesting and amazing change within the Milwaukee community within only a year of the engagement. And you've really helped the Milwaukee Tech community to coalesce around the idea of understanding what technology already exists in the region. Not that this had to just grow out of nowhere. It's already there. It's already blowing up. But then also create that correlation of all these leaders and connections to educational entities that drive the change. Can you tell me about what's inspired you and who's inspired you to enter into that and feel comfortable taking on that kind of mission?
It's interesting. All of us are shaped by many people throughout our lives, right? There's the early influences, and I'd say my earliest influence is my grandparents. Really salt of the earth people, but they believe that everybody had value. And I truly believe that. And I believe that at an organizational level, et cetera. So I think that's one influence, is that ability to listen to everyone, learn from everyone, and figure out how you can help everyone, right? And that's part of it. And that's the basis of partnerships, right? If you're listening, you're learning, and then you're figuring out how you can help one another, you can form partnerships that are mutually beneficial into the long run. So that I guess is the one I'll answer with. And then there's obviously lots of professional mentors, et cetera, to whom I'm very thankful.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kathy. And thank you for taking your time today to walk through what you're doing in the Milwaukee community, the transformation that's happening, some of your influences, just a wealth of information. I really appreciate it.
Well, and thank you for the opportunity. Have a great day.
Hey, you too. And to all of our listeners, we're so glad that you spent some time today on the podcast. We will see you next time.